Morning. So my plan for today was to head outside and do a little bit of recording, but the weather is absolutely dreadful. It's grey, it's raining, it's miserable. It feels just like being back home, to be honest. So this last few months I've been using our little outside decking area to record some of the intros and outros to these videos. But because the weather is so awful today, the lighting's going to be horrible out there and it's raining, so you would probably hear that. It doesn't make for a very nice recording experience or a very nice viewing experience. So I thought I'd stay inside and rearrange this room a little bit. This is my studio slash office space that also doubles as a guest room for when I have family or friends coming over, mostly from England. So it's great for stuff like that, but for recording videos, it doesn't exactly look very nice. So yeah, I'm gonna rearrange so that I can hopefully make a nice little set behind me. I think I'm gonna actually flip the whole thing around. So yeah, that's my plan for today. That as well as talking maybe a little bit about the harsh Swedish winter, as well as maybe giving out a couple of tips about things that I've found particularly helpful since having moved to a country with a cold, harsh winter climate. It's actually really hot in here, so I'm going to take this off. So obviously these things that I'm going to talk about today don't just apply to Sweden. They apply to anywhere with a cold, harsh winter with, short days and long nights and that kind of thing. So before I get to rearranging this room, the first thing that I wanted to talk about today was vitamin D. Vitamin D is not a thing I'd ever thought about supplementing with before, which is a little bit strange, I suppose, because there's not exactly a lot of sunlight in the UK in the winter months either. But the first or second winter that I spent here in Sweden, I can't remember which one it was, but I suffered really, really bad with fatigue, just feeling awful, tired all the time, no energy to do anything. To start with, I thought it was maybe my diet, so I changed up basically everything you can think of. No help. I ended up going and getting tested for a few different things, and it turned out that I was pretty badly vitamin D deficient. So I started supplementing with vitamin D, and it went away instantly. So I would definitely recommend going out and buying some vitamin D supplements. It costs about 60 or 70 krona here. It's about £5, something like that. So it's really not much at all, and it's definitely worth it. I normally start taking it as soon as the days start getting shorter and the nights getting longer and whatever, just to prepare for those winter months. But this year's actually been a little bit different with the coronavirus pandemic. I've actually been taking it all year because vitamin D is actually really good for your immune system. So I thought, at the price that it is, it's worth just kind of taking it all year round anyway. So yeah, if you're thinking about moving to a place with a colder winter climate, then definitely pick up some vitamin D. And obviously this applies to you if you live in a cold winter climate and you don't take vitamin D. It's really surprised me how many Swedes I've spoken to who don't supplement with vitamin D throughout the winter. Seasonal depression is a pretty well-known thing here, and I really feel like vitamin D helps, so yeah, I definitely recommend it. Anyway, I'm going to get to rearranging this room, so tag along and I'll see you in a little bit. Absolute bangers. Alright, so there we are. I think I'm pretty happy with how it turned out, to be honest. There's still a few bits that I'd like to do when I get the chance, but all in all, yeah, I think it turned out pretty well. So anyway, back onto the point of the video. We were talking about the fact that winter is definitely on its way, and I thought I'd give out a couple of pieces of advice, things that I wish that I'd been told before I spent, winters here. So this is probably a thing that won't really apply to Swedes that much, but it's definitely something that I wish I'd considered before I came to Sweden for the first time, and it's clothing. I know it seems like a stupidly obvious one, something that everybody considers. If you go into a cold place, you need to take a coat and a hat. Well, I messed this up pretty bad to start with. So the first time I visited Sweden, it was around the end of November, and I'd been warned about what the weather was probably going to be like. I was told that it was probably going to be grey, it was probably going to be raining, and it was probably going to be a little bit cold. Now, to me, that sounded exactly like the weather that I would have been coming from. You know, from England, it's always like that at that time of year. So I travelled to Sweden wearing the clothes that I always wore everywhere, which was Vans and a hoodie. And I thought, you know, I manage in the UK when it's raining and when it's cold, you know, I'll be absolutely fine in Sweden. Well, anyway, for the first part of my trip, that's exactly what the weather was like. I survived, albeit a little bit cold, but I was fine. Anyway, during the second part of my trip, it snowed hard, like a lot. Probably not compared to normal Swedish standards, but coming from England, you know, when it snows for us, if we get like an inch, if we get 2 or 3 centimetres of snow, it's like the country stops. It's just not a country that is prepared for snow. So on my first visit here, when we had, I don't know how much it must have been, 20 centimetres of snow over one night, it was a lot of snow for me. And it was definitely a lot of snow for somebody who was wearing Vans and a zip-up hoodie. So as you can imagine, that turned into a pretty expensive trip for me, because I had to go out and buy winter boots and a coat because I was so poorly prepared for it being any type of real bad weather. I managed in the end, but it is a thing that I wish I'd have been a little bit more prepared about. So maybe it's something that you could think about as well. To be honest, it's not really a thing that I've ever gotten any better at. Living in a country where it's generally pretty good weather in the summer and generally freezing in the winter, you would have thought I'd have maybe gotten a little bit better at determining what clothing I need. But no, I'm always either too hot or too cold. I'm just terrible at it. Luckily for me, I'm not really a person who's bothered too much by the cold, which I guess in that respect is one of the reasons that I fit in pretty well here in Sweden, because Swedes in general don't care at all about the weather. There's a saying here in Sweden that goes something like "Det finns inget dåligt väder, bara dåliga kläder." That roughly translates to "there is no bad weather, only bad clothing." And I really like that. I think that sums up the mentality of Swedes on bad weather pretty well. They don't let bad weather stop them from going out and doing things. Although that's not to say that it isn't a great thing to complain about. So I think I'll leave it there for today. Thank you very much for joining me. I know it wasn't the best, but I do hope you got something out of this video. And if you did, then please consider hitting the subscribe button because it really does help small content creators like myself. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section. So if you live in Sweden, let me know what you think about the glorious winters in this country. And if you live in a different country, I'd love to hear how your winters compare to the things that I've been talking about today. But yeah, that's it for now. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.